What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined, as I will be always on Fridays, by my esteemed colleague, Jason Timpf, who, just like legs, you and I getting off to late starts.
Oh my gosh, man! It has been a brutal transition from the off season to the absolute grind of the regular season. That said, I'm starting to find my groove, and at least the basketball has been keeping up. Every night we've had something to talk about.
Yeah, it's so true. There is a lot to talk about, but it is a little rusty. We need to start changing. Maybe James, let's start promoting our show at 10-ish. It's 10-ish Mountain Time or 12-ish Eastern Time. We never get it right. So if you guys are just tuning in for the first time this year, me and Legler are doing the shows Mondays and Wednesdays. Jason Timpf is joining the show for Fridays. And, of course, Mark Stein is going to give you the inside scoop over the weekend about what people are talking about around the NBA. But on today's show, we have a great one because I thought last night's game between the Heat and the Spurs was very interesting for a variety of reasons. The game itself was okay, but it was interesting because the Heat are doing something very unique. And the Spurs and Victor Wembanyama are very good at making that thing not very valuable. So I think it makes for an interesting conversation. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about the NBA Cup, and we're going to draft and try to predict who we think is going to win it. And then later on, at the very end, we're going to talk about the lottery. It's early for the lottery, but already I'm starting to think about who would be the most interesting team to win the lottery with this loaded draft. But Jason, let's start today with the top storyline. Somehow, against all odds, the top storyline across the NBA is Ryan Rollins and what he did for the Milwaukee Bucks without Giannis Antetokounmpo in the lineup. He was incredible. Really, this is 2 games in a row now that he's been incredible. First of all, what did you think of that game and the Bucks getting a win without Giannis over the Warriors?
Well, we've seen this a couple times with the Warriors where they've, in the Portland game and in this game in particular, where they've struggled with some of these like bigger athletes getting downhill. That's been a little bit of an issue for them, especially in screening actions. And I think also when you have older guys, like when you've got dudes that are 37 and up in your rotation, I think they are the guys that tend to show the ebb and flow of regular season intensity the most. But Ryan Rollins has been a revelation long before the game last night. He's been getting to the basket at a preposterous rate. He is at 18 for 24 at the rim to start the season. 75% for a guard is completely insane. And like, honestly, one of the things that I think has been really impressive about the Bucks in general to start the season is obviously they don't have the most on paper talent in the world, but you can be more than the sum of your parts when the pieces complement each other. And one of the things that they started to figure out towards the tail end of last season is, like, I know, big shock, but shooting around Giannis seems to work. Like, if you just space the floor on Giannis and he can drive and kick to these guys, they're gonna hit shots and it'll all come together. Well, what's been really fascinating to see this year is to have downhill athletic guards like Cole Anthony and Ryan Rollins, who have both looked really like natural fits in this offense because it's the same concept. It's downhill athleticism surrounded by shooting. And with Ryan Rollins, he's been getting to the basket. He can make all the kick out reads in pick and roll. And then the last piece of it is he only hit 5 pull-up threes all season last year. And he's hit 6 already this season on 12 attempts. And so if you can hit the shot when the dude dies on the screen or goes under, if you can get to the rim when the guy chases over the top, and if you can make the reads, that's a really strong foundation. And then you just don't see guards that finish at the rim as efficiently as Ryan does. I think it's a testament to really smart team building on the margins. And then I think the Bucks might have found one here with Ryan.
They might have found one. I want to put the 3-point shooting in a box for a second. Let's come back to that because to me, that's a question mark and it's probably a pretty important one. But let's just start with the things that he does really well. First of all, just unbelievable footwork, both at like getting to the rim and finishing. You talked about the good finishing. That has a lot to do with touch, but it's also how he gets to the rim. He sets himself up to be able to get around the rim protection with incredible footwork. He has, I mean, I don't know who is the best at this in the NBA. Donovan Mitchell's very good. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's very good. But when you're splitting two defenders and you have to get real skinny between both of them, and the footwork to do that while also being able to explode to the rim is really difficult. He's really good at that. But he also is, I think, very, very, very good at mid-range pull-up footwork. And that sounds like a silly thing because he's pretty quick. He's got some quickness to him. He's got a good handle, but he can get to his spot so naturally just by setting guys up and being able to make moves that lend himself to the sidestep, pull up mid-range, or counter by looking like that and then getting to the rim. So his footwork to me, if I was to say like number one skill set that I like about him, his shot in the mid-range looks phenomenal, but it's his footwork on both of those things that stand out.
Yeah, it's footwork. I've always said is like the vehicle with which you deploy your athleticism. Like we've all seen big athletes that can't actually get to spots because they struggle to use their feet. And I thought one of my favorite possessions from last night's game was that little mid-range pull-up he hit an ISO off the left side. I think it was against Kuminga, if I remember correctly, but he's on the left wing and he drives right to the left elbow extended and he pops up off the ground and the defender is just completely lost in the dust and he gets tons of separation and rises up right over the top to hit it. He had a step-through move where he pump faked and then pivoted on his right foot into his left hand. He's been very good all season at using his right shoulder to get into rim protection and then get outside wide with his left hand to finish up high off the glass. The super soft touch is the big one because we've all seen it. Like the vast majority of guards in the NBA are like 57, 56% at the rim. And then we've seen some of them that can struggle and get down into the low 50s, and that's where it can become detrimental. For him to be that efficient at the rim as a guard is super impressive. And this is, I think, a testament to his size, too. I think he's a little bigger than people realize. He's basically like a big power guard that brings downhill force. And I love the point you made about the footwork because, again, there's a lot of athletes in the league that can't get to their spots, and Ryan's showing the ability to do that.
And then you go to the pick and roll game, right? So the other part of this is he has the ability to kind of do this in isolation or just in the flow of an offense. You're attacking closeouts, you get into the mid-range, can you get separation? So he's really good at that, but he's really good and really efficient right now in the pick and roll. 19 picks from Kuzma, 1.36 points per direct, 17 picks from Turner, 1.55 points per direct, 10 picks from Bobby Portis, 1.33 points per direct. All three of those numbers are incredible. And that's the thing is, if you're going to be like, here's one of my takes about him as I'm watching him, because we're going to ask the question about whether or not he has star potential. I think there are certain players, and he falls into this bucket, where are you good enough to be a star? And are you good enough right out of the package that a team will invest in you to grow into that? And some players, there's not like a bridge skill that gets you there. So, okay, you're going to be a role player for a couple years, but you're going to grow into this. He might be one of those guys in the situations he's been in. People haven't said, well, let's just put him in the pick and roll and let him operate the offense. But now that he's elevated to a spot out of necessity, you watch it and you go, yeah, but he's really good at this now. You put him in the pick and roll and he can run your offense. So part of me, that's the big question. I love his pick and roll game. And I think it might be one of the reasons why I like him actually as a star player, almost more than I would a role player trying to fit in around a system that's already established.
Yeah, it's hard for me to know for sure about the star level upside because of the fact that this is such a small sample and the numbers are so jarringly different than last year. So, for instance, he finished at the rim about 1.1 times per game last year. This year, it's 3.6. That's like literally 3.5 times as often.
Yeah.
That's such a dynamic increase. Obviously, there's a usage increase that goes hand in hand with that, but it's such a dynamic increase that it makes you want to just be a little hesitant after such a small sample size to overreact. And then we talked about the pull-up shooting to go from, and he shot the ball poorly in his first few games of the season. The three-point shots really come around in the last couple of games. And so it's one of those things where we're in such small sample size territory. But at the same time, there's certain things that just work in the NBA. And when you're a big guard when you're a big guard that can sustain back pressure, meaning like once you get over the top of the screen, when these athletes are coming at you from behind to back pressure, you can shield them because you have the strength. But then you can, from there, either finish at the rim, like you mentioned, the footwork in the mid range, or make the kick out reads, like hit the roll man, hit the skip pass to the weak side corner, which he's been doing consistently. I think the last piece of it from there is a game management piece. And I want to give him credit for this because I feel like this was an issue with some of Giannis's other pick and roll partners in the past, like Kevin Porter Jr., even to a certain extent, certainly with Dame. I felt like Ryan Rollins' aggression, and obviously last night notwithstanding because Giannis didn't play, but I feel like his aggression has really like had a nice balance with Giannis. It's complemented Giannis. It hasn't come at the expense of what Giannis
Mm.
does. And so I think there's like a good kind of like feel for the game that he has that complements him really well. That stood out to me right away this year.
And he had really good I mean, last night I thought he did a great job of being aggressive while also not being reckless, right? He was being aggressive, but he made great passes in key moments. And to your point, the sample size is small. I almost mean less like from a qualitative standpoint, like is he good enough to be a good star, a superstar? I more mean the mold of player to me is more like he needs the ball. Like I think the role of player is he should have the ball in his hands, and therefore he should be a point guard that is running your offense, even with a Giannis. You build something around that, as opposed to try to fit in around two other guys and just float around the perimeter and pick your spots where they come. He might actually be a better player the more elevated his role is. And a lot of this has to do with the mid-range shooting. You know, we talk about this a lot. The game is played right now at the foul line, the rim, and the three-point line. The last 15 years, it's become that. But star players, the stir, what is it? What stirs the drink are the players that can finish in the mid-range because they're attacking and they can get there. And that's why he's such a good I believe in that part of his game, his mid-range game. And so if he can pass and hit the open three, he can get Giannis, he can finish at the rim. Oftentimes you need a guy, well, that didn't open anything up. How's our mid-range game? Actually really efficient.
No, absolutely. Like, because when he starts really spamming action with Giannis too, what's going to end up happening is guys are going to key in on the roll. And when they're
Yep.
keyed in on the roll, that's going to provide him basically with one of two choices. They're either going to bring a third defender over into the action where he can make the skip pass, which he's been making, or he's going to have to hit those short range shots. He's going to have to hit those floaters. He's going to have to hit those little short pull ups. We've been talking about this with Jokic forever. Like, to me, that's the most important part of late game scoring is when the defense actually defends well enough to take away the layup and to take away the three. What kind of reliable shot making do you have that's close to the basket? And we've seen Giannis build out a little bit more of a reliable kind of hesitation pull up. He had a huge shot against the Knicks in crunch time, a little one leg fadeaway around the foul line, which is like a classic example of that type of shot. Obviously, the big shot that Ryan hit last night, that little elbow pull up we were talking about, like that is how you close games, because what happens at the end of games is defenses figure out how to take away the layups and the threes. And all of a sudden, you've got to generate something closer to the basket. Last thing I want to say, I don't want to overlook this with Ryan. I think he's been really good on defense to start the
Right.
year. And like
Yep.
one of the things that's been crazy, like, because he was phenomenal down the stretch of the Knicks game. He did a great job on Jalen Brunson. He picked him clean on a back pressure possession. He contested him so significantly on a pull-up three on the right wing that he forced an air ball. Like, just great contest. He's got good size and length and
Length.
athleticism.
Yep.
And one of the things we saw in years past was they had Brook and Giannis, and Brook and Giannis were like obviously protecting the rim, but Brook didn't quite have the mobility that a guy like Miles Turner did. And they were playing a lot of Gary Trent and Dame together. And that was just leading to this dynamic where the perimeter athleticism wasn't there. And now consistently, Gary Trent will be like the third most athletic guard on the floor because he'll be with an AJ Green and a Ryan Rollins, and they'll just have these bigger athletes at the guard position. And Miles Turner is just so much more mobile than Brook Lopez
Yes.
was down at the end, that the Bucks have just looked like a way more imposing defensive team than they have in years past.
And when you're talking about defensive assignments, let's not forget the assignment last night. Steph Curry, one of the toughest assignments you can get. And the night before that, it was Jalen Brunson. So it's like he's being tested with some good matchups here, and he's doing a good job. So I'm with you. The length, the defense, he seems smart. I like some of these guys that come from these smaller schools. He went to Toledo, I think. Is that right? Where he comes out of is Toledo. And sometimes I like Yeah, and sometimes I like these guys that come out of these mid majors, and because they almost get a heavier dose of more skills, right? When you're at that kind of place, you're going to have to do a lot of things. So when you get to the NBA level, it's not a surprise. Um, a couple things before we get to the 3-point shooting. If I were to describe his game right now, I would say silky. I would say slithery because he has that ability to get skinny and kind of twist on a dime, which I think is very important in today's NBA. Silky, and then just like fundamentally sound. And that's when we talk about the footwork is everything kind of looks like it's supposed to. There's not a lot of shots where you're like, he kind of got a clunky thing here. He gets to the thing he's trying to get to. Are there any other words you would use to describe his game?
I'm gonna just say power. Like, I think there's like a size element to him at the position, which is somewhat rare. Like, he's just strong. He plays off of 2 feet a lot, even when he's finishing at the basket. There's like an initiation of contact, especially at the rim, that I'm seeing from him. That's really impressive.
Mm,
I think it's just like I've been kind of drawn to these big ball handlers a lot lately anyway, because I find that as the game gets more and more physical, that those are the guys that can kind of withstand that.
good
But
take.
but yeah, I like the stuff you said about Silky and footwork, and then I would just add power to that.
Okay. And then let's look at player comps. I mean, we always get ourselves into trouble when you try to comp them to other already established players, but there were two players that kind of come to mind as I'm watching these last two games. One is CJ McCollum, because I think CJ McCollum is another guy that it's not necessarily speed, but he just has really good footwork and gets to his spots, gets elevation on his shot, and it's always on balance. The other one would be Devin Booker. And Devin Booker's a little bit different. And then here's where the big comps change is both of those guys have a 3-point shot that's well established and they can get to it off the dribble. But those two guys to me feel like comps to him. So maybe somewhere in between that, in that they're just really hard to guard because they can always get their footwork to the spot so that the release valve is always like a 16, 17, 18-foot pull-up jumper, which you're not trying to get to, but they can always get to that if you shut everything else down. So what do you think of those comps? And is there anybody else you would throw in there?
I like them both because both of those guys are also in that like kind of 6'5", 6'6", can use their bodies after they get over the top of screens to kind of slow down. Like that's kind of there's a lot of guys in the league that lack pace in pick and roll. I'd actually include Damian Lillard in this conversation. Like
Hilarious.
one of the things that drove me a little crazy with him with Giannis was like when he would attack in ball screens, there was one speed and it was drive 100 miles an hour to the basket. And if he didn't have a layup, he would like kind of do the Steve Nash and just kind of drive along the baseline and drive back out. He was one speed in pick and roll. And I like that Ryan kind of has that like methodical wait for the reads to develop kind of approach there in the middle of the floor. McCollum and Booker are both good comps. I'm trying to think of another kind of like big methodical guard. Like I think we're seeing a lot of this from Steph Castle in the early part of the year too. Steph's obviously a better athlete than Ryan Rollins, but he also plays on 2 feet a lot and is a very good kind of passer, short range shot maker there close to the basket. But again, I think this is kind of the guard of the future. Is like the big guard that can guard multiple positions on one end of the floor, but that can also be more of like a methodical shot creator and pick and roll. I love the point you made about the small school piece of this because in general, I think the league is starting to index more towards IQ and polish than just pure
Mm-hmm.
athleticism. And I think we're seeing a lot of like random examples of this. Like even just Josh Giddey's success in Chicago, I think is a classic example of this kind of thing. When you have a guy that can push the pace, run action, and make the kick out reads, it just kind of greases the wheels for your entire offense. I think even Jamal Murray kind of fits this mold, although more of a scorer, but just that bigger guard that can come off of action and just get to his spots because he has a strength and physicality to his game.
Well, you see this from guys. I mean, Jalen Wells, Jalen Williams is another one of these examples where they're playing on teams that are compromised in college. Like you come out of Kentucky, you might have 2 or 3, 4 NBA players on your roster with you. So they're taking some of the athleticism load off of you. The floor is going to be spaced. When you go to some of these smaller schools, it's like, hey, I have to do a lot of uncomfortable things. So finishing through contact is one of them. You're not going to have the same space that you would have if you were at this big school. So how do I mitigate that? I just think some of these guys come out with those skill sets as well as manipulating the defense. This is not a perfect theory. This is more of something that I think you see often in those types of prospects, and I think it fits him as well. The last part of this is the 3-point shot. So I'm going to ask you two questions. One is he just doesn't have that many threes under his belt at the NBA level. He's going to have to start taking a lot of them, I think, to be an effective player of his mold. Even if he's good at these other things we talked about, the 3-point shot's going to have to be the thing. What do you make of that? And as a second question, does his breakout over these last handful of games change your perspective on the Bucks at all this season?
So when you have this small sample size, you kind of have to look at the release. And I do think that the
100%.
release looks good. I think there's complications, right? Like, so for instance, in the Warriors game, it was more the pull-up three, and that was a big one that he leaned on throughout the game. He even hit a tough step back along the left wing there late in the game. But then in the Knicks game, it was catch and shoot threes. He had to knock down a couple of corner threes off of Giannis post-ups out of the left corner in the second half that were big shots in that game. And in both cases, I think the release looks fine, but I think he's going to need to be able to hit both, because obviously when Giannis comes back into the equation, it's going to be a lot more spot up reps off of those Giannis attacks. Giannis attacked out of the post a ton in the Knicks game in particular. As far as the Ryan Rollins, I wouldn't just apply it to Ryan. There's a lot of things that have me higher on the Bucks than I thought I would be to start the season. I was already pretty high. Like, I had them at the very top of my third tier of contenders. So I had them 10th in my contender rankings. And I think they've looked a lot more like a second tier contender than a third tier contender. So I'd argue even I had them a bit underrated. There's a few key things. One, the Miles Turner piece, it's so much fun watching Giannis play alongside a real rim protector, like a real mobile rim protector. It brings that dynamic with him as the low man and with Miles defending ball screens that we used to see back in 2020 and 2021 that made this team so devastating defensively. That, in conjunction with them being a lot more athletic on the perimeter than they've looked in years past. And this is not just the development of Ryan Rollins. This is also Doc Rivers finally kind of playing to his strengths. AJ Green's minutes have been increased. He's now starting, like, leaning on your better, bigger athletes on the perimeter. They just look like a team that complements each other really well. And then the last piece is just Giannis. And I was scared after the Knicks game because I was like, man, he is playing so much harder than he did to start last season. He was getting like 4 offensive rebounds a game. He was averaging career highs in several key areas. Like, I was a little worried about him getting worn down. And then we have a knee soreness issue that takes him out of a massive nationally televised game. So that has me a little scared. But if Giannis is going to play at this level and they have the types of big athletes on the perimeter and Doc's actually going to play the right lineup combinations and you actually have a rim protector that's mobile next to Giannis, I think they're every bit as dangerous as the teams in that second tier.
I think I agree with you. And the reason I was a little bit lower on the Bucks this year than most was because, and I shouldn't say than most, I think a lot of people were low on them. There are players that if they're in your starting lineup and I really don't believe in them, I'm just going to be low on your team. Gary Trent Jr. is one of them. Kevin Porter Jr. is another one. And there's these guys, when you go through the roster, you're like, yeah, but they're just going to have to play, and they're going to have to play a lot of minutes and maybe start. And that's why the Rollins piece does change my perspective. Now, I will say it is too early. He was really hot last night. There was an it factor with him too, by the way, because I don't know what he made, like his last 5 jumpers, including the nail in the coffin one, which not everybody does that, but he kind of felt it. They were on the ropes and he was like, no, let me deliver this knockout blow. And I kind of love that. It means something to me that a guy has that, but I want to see it for a couple more weeks before I really, really buy into it. But if that's the case, all of a sudden I look at it and say, okay, now there's nobody on your starting 5 I hate. I might not love everyone, but Gary Trent Jr. to me, I'm not going to buy your team if he's your starting guard, especially when you lack a point guard. It's like, I just am not going to buy your team. He solves that equation if he can keep this going and build a real sample size over the coming weeks. And obviously Giannis is Giannis. I agree with you on the Turner piece. So all those things are great. Let us know in the comments. I'm very curious what you guys think about Ryan Rollins. He's the story of the NBA right now. Do you need more time? Are you buying it right away? Are you buying the Bucks? And also, I'm curious who your NBA comp is for him. Is there a player? Do you agree with us? CJ McCollum, Devin Booker mold? Or is there somebody else you want to throw out? We went a little long on this one, Jason, because I thought it was great stuff. So let's go a little bit quicker on the Miami Heat and the San Antonio Spurs. Hold on, James. We'll do this one here before we go to break. But that game last night, 107-101, the Spurs win. I don't think it was as close as that score indicates, in part because the Miami Heat have this unique offense, super fast pace, spread you out and try to just dribble, drive, dribble, kick, dribble, drive, dribble, kick, just do it over and over again. And I think it wears teams down. Victor Wembanyama, and the first time in franchise history, the 5-0 San Antonio Spurs, they kind of eliminate drives. And really it's him. He eliminates drives. And I thought that's why this game was so interesting was it's hard for a guy like Jaime Jaquez to get by his, I mean, he's really good at getting by his defender, but he's not the best at finishing over rim protectors, especially not one like Victor Wembanyama. And I thought that was like, it was a great style fight because the Heat's strength was mitigated in large part by Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, it was an interesting game in that respect because I agree with you. It wasn't as close as it looked. The Spurs essentially completely dominated the second half outside of a stretch in the early fourth quarter where Miami ran zone for the first time all year. And the Spurs kind of peed down their leg a little bit. they've had a little bit of an issue with zone all season. I was checking this morning. I think they have 22 points and 36 total zone possessions. So that's like another big picture question. There's some stuff with the Spurs big picture, like they're 14th in half court offensive rating this year too. Like they're a little bit of like a we lack that refined polish in the half court type of team. But we all knew that was going to be the case before the season. Where they've blown everybody out of the water is they've been the number 2 defense in the league, the number 1 rebounding team in the league, and they've been very good in transition attacking off of that. That's been their foundation. And I like the way you broke down the way that Victor kind of broke their drive and kick attack, because Miami tried to counter this by essentially having Kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo take a ton of threes.
Right.
They were, I think, 4 for 17 between the two of them. And Bam hit a couple early. Yeah, and it was like, oh, like Bam's not going to let Wemby roam. But Wemby, to his credit, just kind of kept roaming, and Bam kept taking them, and he wasn't hitting them, and Kalel wasn't hitting them. And so essentially what we had was, to your point, a bunch of possessions where guys are driving right into Wemby and either turning the basketball over because they get swarmed on that help, or attempting a shot on him and getting blocked. The other thing I saw is a lot of these early possessions where the kickouts weren't there, or if they were, it was only to Bam or to Kel-El. And so guys were settling for really tough little mid-range jump shots. I thought the Heat had a lot of really bad, like early clock twos in this game. They were 4 for 11 from the mid-range in this game. I thought there were several questionable ones in there. And like there were, guys had big moments like Bam did go right at Wemby and give him some buckets in this game.
I loved it, by the way. I love Bam because he's just willing to be like, he might block my shot, but I'm just going to keep going at him. And he did that in this game and was effective actually in his spots.
Yeah, he had that massive dunk too. He had like several like one-on-one buckets too. He had where he would bump him with his left shoulder and get to that little hook that he hit over the top. But for the most part, Wemby, I thought, won the matchup simply because in the aggregate on all of the possessions, the Heat were not making them pay with their centers hitting threes, and there were a lot of mid-range settles, and there were a lot of bad attempts around the rim. And to your point, if it wasn't for that stretch there in the early fourth quarter, the Spurs might win this game by like 27, 28 points. I liked the game from Wemby overall because his jumper really wasn't going for him. He was 1 for 5 from 3. He was missing
or maybe it was going the way it's actually going for him. I'll get into that in just 1 second. But yes, he might have been shooting more or less like he always shoots, but we'll see.
Yeah, he's missing all these jump shots, but he continued to impact the game by just being the defensive force that he is. And like, I think the easiest way to put it is he's essentially an offense breaking weapon right now. Like he's straight up breaking offenses with his presence. I think the most underrated part with him is it's not just these blocked shots or even deflections. There's so many of these possessions where a dude picks up their dribble right in the middle of the floor and Wemby's there and they just don't know what to do. And they'll like either throw it out and Steph Castle jump the passing lane and they got to turn over, or they'll throw it out to a guy and the pass is off target and it allows their defense to recover in rotation. It's like a possession killing type of pass. And so like, I just think Wemby's been just so good there in the middle of the floor on defense.
We've talked a lot about Wemby, so I'm going to kind of race through, but I do have a couple points I want to make on him really quick. I think his defense is unassailable. He is. I don't think there's an argument for a player that has the defensive impact like him. It's going to be hard to vote for Defensive Player of the Year for the next decade because just his presence makes everything change on the defensive end. So that part, to me, he is 100% the hype that everybody gives. And one underrated part of his defense is nobody gets second chance points against them. Because even if you get a shot off over him, he's already in position to block the next one. So if you grab an offensive rebound and try to go back up, that one's for sure blocked. So it's like if he doesn't block the first one, he's blocking the second one. And you'll notice their numbers on second chance points have been phenomenal. Offensively, there's 2 things. One, every time he hits a step back, sidestep, turnaround 3-pointer, it goes viral. And I think there's this impression that he hits those a lot. He had a behind the back step back 3 yesterday that missed by 6 feet. And I think it happens more than people think. Those ones just never go quite as viral. He's 31% 3-point shooter. And that's what he's been. And I just look at that and say, the highlight offensive parts of his game to me are fun. They're obviously awesome, but he's still not very good at picking and choosing the spots to do that or being efficient at them. And the last one that's more important, in the post, this is such a little detail. Me and you're 6'6". I think I'm 6'5". Like, we're basically the same height. And we both have played in the post in our lives. He has a thing where his dribble is so high that guys are always just trying to steal it as soon as he goes. And it's hard to be good in the post without at least one dribble, right? You have to have one dribble moves in the post. One thing I think he needs to do, this is such a specific detail, there's two ways you can attack, step and dribble, like you're facing up and you're dribbling to try to get a guy off balance. I don't think he can do that because his dribble is so big and that opens him up, and he gets a lot of balls poked away in the post because of that. But there's another one where you can take the dribble, with your back to the or your shoulder into the guy, and it's as the ball's coming up that you take your step. And the reason I make this distinction is the more time the ball has in the air before you go, the more a guy can slide in and poke it away. But if you kind of dribble it, and as it's like in the gather, so to speak, that's where you can take your steps. There's no time now. So if a guy reaches, you read that as the ball's approaching your hand and you spin the other way. And I think it's a simple post thing that he can learn, because he almost always, if you watch him, is stepping while he dribbles. And it's just like the ball is so completely exposed. He should get Jaime Jaquez in the post and score every single time. But right now, I kind of am like, I think Jaime's got him. Just keep him out. Don't let him dribble.
So this is an interesting point, because on the one hand, he is getting shot attempts closer to the rim way more often. Real basic stat, he had 6.3 shot attempts per game inside of 9 feet last year. He's up to 11.4 shot attempts inside of 9 feet this year. But most of them are coming on like drives and step throughs. Like, he's getting pretty good at being physical on his drives and then kind of leaning back for short bank shots and things like that. And then on his drives, when he gets cut off, he's been really good with his step through move. Like, instead of just turning and fading, he's turning and then turning again on that step through and getting all the way to the basket. But to your point, the thing that we haven't seen from Wemby that really should be a bread and butter thing for him is left block, right hand, power dribble, step into the lane, little left shoulder hook. And to your point, he's getting dislodged a lot on those, and he's not getting as close to the basket, and he's not sustaining his base the way that he needs to. And so I think those are little details that, like, we have to remind ourselves how young Wemby is and that he still has a long way to go. I mean, this was a guy, when he came over with that team to play against G League Ignite, when he came over, he literally played like Klay Thompson, like flying off of screens and shooting movement threes and stuff. Like, this is a guy that it seems like last summer was the first time he was like, oh, I'm going to be a power player. So I'm with you, but like, I'm cautiously optimistic that that's going to be something he figures out over the next couple of years.
There's no question. And I'm being critical on a guy who might be the front runner for MVP right now. Obviously, it's only 4 or 5 games. I'm being critical of him. And the truth is, if he does figure these things out, the game might literally be ruined, because it's almost nice right now that he can only score 33 a game, even given his height advantage, because defensively, he's erasing 30 points a game just by being on the court. All right, let's take
Can I make one last really quick Spurs point?
Sure.
I have loved how scrappy this team is. And one of the big reasons why they're number one in rebounding, it's not just Wemby, who's obviously awesome, but all of their perimeter players are awesome rebounders. They have 6 players right now in their regular rotation that average more than 6 rebounds per 36 minutes. Steph Castle's great at it. Dylan Harper's great at it. Keldon Johnson's coming in every game as like a defensive wrecking ball. Julian Champagnie has been one of their best rebounders. He had 2 massive offensive rebounders in the clutch against Miami last night that led to wide open threes. The thing that I underrated most about this team is it's not just Wemby. They are big and athletic on the perimeter with Wemby, and that's what makes them so physically imposing.
I actually had one last thing on Miami I wanted to ask you, and that is their system is very unique and it's very different from what they've been doing. And I think there's some winners and losers of that. I think Jaime Jaquez, even though he had a really bad game last night, he's been a winner. I think Davion Mitchell, it's a winner for him because they need a quick guard, and they kind of give him the freedom to kind of try to cook on offense and get downhill. I think it's been great for Fontecchio, who, by the way, had a great game last night. what did he end up with overall off of the bench? He had 18 points, 5 of 9 shooting, and he got to the foul line a lot.
He looks like Norman Powell.
Yeah, there
He
you
was
go.
like flying off of screens, hitting threes.
That's right. That's right. So there's some guys, but there's one big loser, I think, from this system, and it might be Nikola Jovic. I don't know if this system fits his skill set. And he looked really clunky last night. Didn't play very many minutes. Got a quick hook. And I'm just trying to think, does he fit into the spread out, everybody drive and kick? He might be a guy that I wonder if he has a down year because of it.
Yeah, I feel the same way about Tyler Harrow. Like Tyler Harrow's a guy when he comes back who really depends on ball screens to get into his kind of like his bag, so to speak. He's not a great one-on-one player. So like there are certain guys that I think like, because why does it work for Jaime? It works because he can get with his size quickly into like the mid post, low post, and then he's a good passer. So when the defense reacts to him, he can make the kickouts and everyone can play on that. Why does it work for Davion Mitchell? He can get up the floor and just hit a gap with his sheer speed and create that like initial advantage. I think Jovic, I have seen him have some moments where he's looked better this year. Where he's getting those transition attacks and hitting gaps and having some success. I do think Wemby kind of messed up their entire chain last night in their drive and kick, because to your point, that first drive was just getting immediately stifled at the rim by Wemby. But like I do think you're making an interesting point in the sense that guys that benefit most from screening action, I think are going to be guys that struggle when you stop running screening action. I do generally like the idea of the offense. I think it's like a little bit of like a hybrid between like Indiana, like we're going to run and push every single time to get advantages. And then obviously what we saw from Memphis last year where they kind of went away from ball screens early in the year. I think it makes sense because it's kind of driving their pace. But there are certain limitations because, to your point, once you run into a team that's not going to overreact to that first drive, all of a sudden it can kind of break the chain. And I do think that there are absolutely going to be guys that reap negative benefits from that situation.
I also wonder if they can keep that pace. It's a 109 pace right now, league leading. And I thought they got tired last night and we're 5 games into the season. And you just wonder, like, what is that pace, a 109 pace, if that's essential for you doing what you do? What's that like in January when you're 35 games into the season? Can they keep that up? It'll be one of the questions.
It's Heat culture, Adam.
Well, you're not wrong. That is, I think, what they're banking on, but we'll see. Let's take a break. On the other side, we're going to look at the NBA Cup. Yes, you know it, the Emirates NBA Cup. We're going to have a little competition here and see if we can't pick the winner, and then we'll talk about the lottery teams on the other side. First, NBA tip-off week, and FanDuel is your home for live betting. So even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join because FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to sign up today. Play your game with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older and present in select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. You know that moment, the one when you realize you left your favorite pair of sunglasses at the beach or on the roof of your car or at a gas station 3 states away? Well, I've been there too, but Shady Rays has completely changed the game. They're sunglasses that are made for real life. They're seriously good looking, polarized, durable, not stupidly expensive, and best of all, if you lose or break them, even on the first day of owning them, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. It's an unbelievable deal. And they've got all kinds of shades from navigators and aviators like I wear, or you can even get like ski and snowboarding goggles on their website, polarized ski and snowboarding goggles Like Timpf, our skier who moved from Tucson to Denver so he could ski, and then all of a sudden it hasn't snowed since he's moved here. I don't know if he brought it with him or what, but no matter what it is you're looking for, you can get Shady Rays and eyewear that has your back. We've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com and use the code AC35 for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, back here, segment 2 of the All-NBA show. I'm with Jason Timpf. He is, of course, over at the Volume Hoops Tonight. Check that show out. Fantastic show. Goes live after most weeknights after the games. Really good watch. I threw you a little dig in the ad break there. I don't know if you saw it. I think you brought Tucson with you to Colorado. We're never going to have see snow again.
Dude, I'm telling you, I'm actually going skiing again today. It's just I just have the itch. I can't help myself. So I finished my show earlier this morning, and we're gonna go hit Keystone. They did get right after we left. They got like a solid 5 or 6 inches that put a little blanket on. But I'm not gonna lie, when I was skiing, I looked across the valley there, and Breckenridge. It was looking kind of grassy. It was the runs were looking kind of grassy. So I'm a little nervous.
Any day now. Any day now, it's going to hit, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
God, I hope so.
Let's talk about the NBA Cup, man. It's kind of this funny thing. I'm an NBA Cup hater. To me, these are just other games, but I'm not going to rain on everybody else's parade. I will get into it if it makes for more compelling, better competition here going forward. And there is something interesting about who wins and who doesn't. But I thought a fun way to preview this, it gets started tonight, was to try to pick.
You hate the NBA Cup? You didn't enjoy those like Pacers, Bucks, Pacers, Celtics games 2 years ago. The Lakers. You didn't enjoy OKC, Milwaukee last year.
The only NBA Cup game I remember was New Orleans being in the semifinal and losing by 50, and everybody, and then the reports coming out that everybody was at the club the night before, and I'm like, well, if they don't care, I'm not going to care. So that's kind of how I look at it. But nonetheless, we got new courts, wacky courts, and different things tonight. I thought it'd be fun. Is if we snake drafted, we tried to predict, and I think every week we're going to do this where you and I go head to head trying to make some predictions of some kind or drafting people in some category. We're going to draft Cup winners, and the way it'll work is if you take somebody from a specific group, that group closes, and then at the end we'll each get one wild card team from any group. So if you pick somebody in East Group A is now off limits, and then so on and so forth. I'm gracious enough that I will give you the first pick in this snake draft here. Who is your number one team you think is going to win this NBA Cup?
Oh, man. So this would be the team that's playing the best basketball right now out of all of these teams. I am actually going to go with Denver.
Man, you're zigging so hard on the obvious answer here. I love it. So there's like an obvious first pick, and you're going to galaxy braid it here. I love it.
Winning is all that matters, Adam. I've got to take the right pick here. So to be honest, I've seen a lot of impressive things from different teams around the league. We talked about how Milwaukee's better than we expected to start the year. San Antonio is better than we expected to start the year. I view still Oklahoma City and Denver as the top tier. I haven't seen another team encroach on that tier yet. And like Golden State, I thought about them a little bit early, and then they've had just a couple of flat performances. And even in the Denver game, I mean, if it's not 13 straight from Steph down the stretch, then Denver's undefeated right now. Oklahoma City without J-Dub, their offense hasn't been very good, and they're still not a very good defensive rebounding team. I still think here in the early going, Denver's been the most complete team.
So I love the pick. Obviously, it appeases me, but they are also in what I think is by far the toughest bracket. It's Denver, Golden State, Houston, Portland, and San Antonio. Just getting out of that, I think that is 4 of those teams, Denver, Golden State, Houston, San Antonio right now, I think you look at and say that's some of the best. And then the worst team in that group is Portland, who nobody wants to play. That's a really tough place to play. Denver is there on the road tonight, possibly without Jamal Murray. So I love the pick. I think Denver does have a good chance at this, but I'm going to take the obvious answer here, which in my opinion is the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think we should pick them on any given night. If you just say Oklahoma City, you're likely to be right about them winning something. And then their bracket has Phoenix, Sacramento, Utah. I don't think Oklahoma City is losing to them. Minnesota, banged up right now without Anthony Edwards. I think that they're very likely to come out of their pool. And then if you just said on any given night, Oklahoma City versus a team, Oklahoma City is likely to win. So I'm going to take the easy one All right, we'll go back to you. We won't even do it snake draft style. I'll let you get the next pick here. So if OKC and Denver,
Okay.
that's Group
I
A,
like the
West Group
OKC.
A. Group. Go ahead.
I like the OKC pick, by the way. Like they still have been really strong defense to transition. The big thing with Oklahoma City, I want to give them credit for because it hasn't always been pretty. Their offense hasn't been good. Their rebounding hasn't been good. They've ended up in some really close games, but like they've kind of had like a little bit of a veteran team. Like we're going to close you out down the stretch by just playing better basketball in the last like dozen possessions, which is so not typical for such a young team. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I think they have a clutch net rating of like 50 to start the season. They've been really, really good in those situations. And like a massive sample too. They played like 35 minutes of clutch basketball already this year. After that, I'm going to go with Cleveland. They are similarly like you had laid out in a tier where the other teams in that group are just not playing well. Indiana's been physically beat up to start the year. Atlanta has been super underwhelming to start the year, especially as a defense. Toronto looked super impressive in Atlanta and then has promptly become one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
And the Washington Wizards, like I talked a lot about Trey Johnson before the year. I think
Love
Trey's
him.
been pretty impressive for a little rookie scoring guard off the bench, but like it's just a weak kind of pool that kind of sets up nicely for Cleveland. And I think Cleveland's a clear pick to get out of that pool.
I don't know if everybody caught that little guard. It was a dig he threw in at Trey Johnson. He said for a little guard. Me, you, and Legs, we're all going to have big man bias. I love this. It's the only show in NBA history that has this much big man bias. Get these little guards out of here. I think that's a good one. They also have a very weak bracket. I think that's the biggest thing. As much as I love the Washington, they're one of my favorite teams of the early part of the season. They're not that good. Cleveland's banged up too, though. That's the only issue. So we'll see how they escape this next week or so. Next on the board, this is where it gets kind of tough. I think I'm going to, you know what? Yeah, I'll play it safe. I'm going to go in Group C, and I'm going to take the New York Knicks. There are contenders here. We just raved about Milwaukee. Miami is, always a tough out. Chicago's playing great. Charlotte is an interesting up and down team. I mean, Charlotte, you never know what you're going to get out of them. They could be really competitive. They could be horrible. But it's not the easiest bracket. I do think the Knicks, though, come out of this one. Part of me made this big. I made this list, I think, before the Milwaukee game last night, and I don't want to be too recency biased and swerve and go to Milwaukee. So I'll take the Knicks. I think that they're still the best group in East C.
I have been pretty underwhelmed by the Knicks to start the year. I will say, little qualifier there. There have been some real metric differences between the way they played last year and this year. Like they are throwing substantially more passes per game. They went from being like I want to say like 18th or 19th in the league in passes per game to being top 5. So I think there's a certain amount of like, this is a really new system. And so it's kind of clunky as they figure out some of those details. Their defense has actually looked a little better than I thought to start the season, but I haven't been super high on New York. I actually had them as the third team in that tier behind Milwaukee and Miami. It's the Eric Spoelstra, like his ability to just win a chess match kind of thing.
That's a good take.
And then obviously all the stuff we talked about with Milwaukee. I am going to go a little bit homer here, and I'm going to take the Lakers next. And this
Okay.
is my case, okay? They're in a pool with a bunch of teams that aren't playing well. Memphis has been just like last year. They're good against bad teams and bad against good teams. Dallas has been fundamentally broken because that roster is just so imbalanced. New Orleans has been one of the worst teams in the league. The Clippers stars have come out the gates and been really kind of out of shape and sloppy. They've looked underwhelming to start the year. They got
really
they got their butts kicked by the Warriors the other night. The Lakers have the best unit in that pool in their offense. Now, the offensive rating numbers in aggregate haven't looked good because they've been so devoid of ball handling because of injuries that when Austin left the floor over the course of the last week, they like straight up couldn't score the basketball. But in the last 3 games with no Luka, with Austin on the floor, they've had a 120 offensive rating. And then Luka, who will return, he's questionable for tonight. I don't know if he'll be available for the Memphis game, but he should be available starting this weekend and be back. They've been scoring the ball extremely well. They like sliced and diced the Minnesota Timberwolves multiple times in the last week. I think that they have just a really strong set of shot creation that just kind of sets a really high floor for them. And weirdly, after how disappointing they looked on opening night, they've been one of the more impressive teams in the league since then. So with Luka coming back, I'm going to go with the Lakers next.
James, we're gonna have to make a counter for Timpf picking Lakers things in this every week. There's almost we'll have to reserve one spot. I'll get a Denver one every week. I get one Denver thing that I add to my list. Jason gets one Lakers thing he gets to add. It's actually a good case as you look at that group. You're right. It's not going to be Dallas or New Orleans. So you're really looking at Memphis, Clippers, Lakers. You could make a case against all three just as easily as you could make a case for what you just said for the Lakers. I actually relieved that you went there because I regretted in the last round not taking Group B winner, which I'm going to go with the Philadelphia 76ers. I kind of love the Sixers right now. I think that their style of play is sustainable. That these guards, it's not Edgecomb's obviously had a hot start. He'll probably be up and down, but I just like the idea of their 4-guard lineups. Kelly Oubre playing power forward, and then you have a variety of centers you can throw out there. And Embiid in particular, even though he's on this minutes restriction, I think it makes sense to have him as the 5th guy along the style that they're playing. If they thread that needle correctly, I could see them actually being a pretty interesting team where you have him to punish guys and he's so big, you're going to have compromise your defense. And then you have 4 guards who can get around anybody. That's a really good recipe for regular season wins and turns out NBA Cup wins. So I'm going to go with them over teams like Detroit and Orlando, who's just making me sad. Although Anthony Black, shout out Anthony Black last night. He was fantastic. That means you get a wild card now. So we're only doing one more, James. So we have one wild card. So a team that was not taken, and it can be from any pool.
So first of all, I agree with you about Philly. I had them number 1 in my East Pool B as well. Detroit's been kind of underwhelming. The weird thing with them is not only Cade hasn't been great to start the year, but they also last year were 6th in transition points per game, and they're down to 19th to start this season. They're just not running the way that they did last year. Boston, it's really up and down. They can't defensive rebound. They've been giving up a million wide open threes at the expense of protecting the paint. Orlando's offense looks fundamentally broken. It's weird. It's like the group of disappointing teams. And then there's the team that everybody was really down on, who has been crushing with Philly. And I 100% agree with you. I think they've been one of the most fun teams to watch to start the year. Like I've really enjoyed watching them. So I like that pick. I am going to go with the Golden State Warriors. And my case here is they have been one of the most impressive defenses in short bursts this year. Obviously, they've had their ugly games like they did against Milwaukee last night, on the road against Portland in that back-to-back. But they kind of shut down the Lakers. They had a really successful second half defensively against Denver. They completely broke the Clippers offense in that matchup the other day. They held them to back-to-back 20-point quarters. They just have a really high IQ, smart defense that's faster than you'd think for as old as they are. And then on the other end of the floor, they're just getting enough from Jimmy and enough from Jonathan Kuminga, and Buddy Hield and Brandon Podziemski are shooting the ball well enough that they've been a good enough offense to win games against good teams. I think they're one of those teams that's like peaking earlier in the season, which I think makes them a good pick for an in-season tournament type of thing.
I think they're only peaking early because they're healthy, and we wonder if they're going to be healthy at the end of the year. Because if they are healthy, I just buy the Warriors. I think they're smart. They do a lot of things. They can make life difficult on you. I think they're going to be a very good playoff team. But yes, it's early in the season, which means they're healthy, and I think they're going to be very good. Although we did mention this before, Kuminga kind of they need Kuminga to take on certain defensive challenges and assignments, and that was part of the Rollins story last night. Was Kuminga, I think, Rollins caught a lot of people off guard and is surprising some people right now. So take this with a grain of salt. But I do think for them to ultimately be successful, he's going to have to be a guy that can make an impact there, and he didn't last night. But I like it. I like the pick. I'm going to make up for the mistake pick I had. I get draft fever sometimes where I panic, and I did that in my 3rd pick when I took New York. So I'm going to zig on you here, and I'm going to go with Ryan Rollins and the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm going to take them. I think they ride this wave for a little bit here. And in the early go, could they become the first 2-time NBA Cup winners? I think it's possible. So I'll take them as my safety.
I like that.
Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments, by the way. We'll have these out on social as well. You can interact with us. We always love when you interact with our stuff on social. This type of stuff is just for fun. So let us know if you had to take one person's side on this one. We can circle back in a couple weeks and see if either of us got it right. Whose picks are you going to ride with here for the NBA Cup? Let's move on to our last topic here, as we only have a handful of minutes, but it's a little early to be looking at Tankathon. But looking at Tankathon, I have been, because this year has three really big picks in Peterson, Debanza, and Boozer. I think any of those guys can go number one at this point. There'll probably be a little bit more clarity as the year goes on, but there's three players that I think a lot of people talk about as being cornerstone guys. I think a lot of teams are going to start turning the tank on. But I'm interested in who's the most interesting team that could win the lottery. And I'll give you my list and you can react to it. I think first and foremost, it's quickly becoming my Washington Wizards, who I just enjoy them. First of all, they get the better. They have a great chance at this because they're going to be horrible record-wise, and they can get the Phoenix Suns' pick if it's better than theirs. They have the right to swap, and the Phoenix Suns are going to be horrible. So they might have two stabs at the lottery here, and they already have guys I love, Keyshawn George in particular. Trey Johnson's interesting. Sarr, not the biggest fan of Carrington. I like these guys. It's a good core. I just don't know if any of those guys are a guy I think is a number one. So if you add a number one to that young core, all of a sudden I look at it and say they're the most fun team in the bad team in the league next year, and are going to be a team that we watch over the coming years grow and develop. So they, to me, are the most interesting lottery winner.
Yeah, I like this pick because if you kind of look at their group, again, like I'm with you. Bub Carrington to me is the big question mark. Like I think Trey Johnson is your starting two in the long run. I think Bilal Coulibaly is a perfectly fine 3-and-D kind of like small forward option, and Alex Sarr is showing a lot as a defensive anchor. It's the 4 spot that kind of is the glaring, like this would be a great spot to have a significant upgrade. And if you somehow put AJ Debonsa into that group, that's where you suddenly look at that as one of the most interesting young cores in the league. I am going to zag here and go with a team that is currently trying to win, and that's the Dallas Mavericks.
This is chaos.
First of all, you sent me this breakdown today. By the way, I sincerely appreciate you setting this breakdown of all the picks and who owes what, what. This is so damn confusing. It's crazy to me how convoluted these like draft pick chains can get. But anyway, Dallas needs a guard. And what I keep looking, and there's several teams like this as you look around. Like I look at Toronto as a team that could really use a guard. I look at the Utah Jazz. I actually really like Markkanen and Kessler as a 4-5. I think they're a really strong 4-5. Like there's a bunch of these teams where you look at the top of this draft. In the top 5 guys, it's all power forwards and point guards. And so if you're looking for somebody in that point guard spot, there's substantial opportunity for a big upgrade there, a big swing piece. And so Dallas, Toronto, Utah, those are the 3 teams that stood out to me as teams that could sneak in there and get a guard that would like fundamentally change their fortunes as a franchise.
The Mavericks got Cooper Flag. I just have this thing against teams winning the lottery multiple years in a row. It just drives me nuts. It just feels wrong. And for the luck that they got with Cooper Flag and everything they did, the other piece of this
hold on a second. Are you actually suggesting that Mavericks fans should be feeling lucky today? These dudes have had the worst. These dudes have had the worst 10 months a sports fan could ever have.
I agree. It's a good point.
Anthony Davis bilateral Achilles tendinopathy or whatever he's dealing with. Like this is absolutely brutal for them.
You're not wrong, but there is also a thing about you should only get so much lottery luck. You're right that all the other luck hasn't gone their way, but I don't want Nico Harrison claiming victory on, look at my plan. It landed us 2 very improbable number 1 picks. I just can't have that happen.
Nico I think shouldn't have nice things. I agree with you.
The funniest outcome is easily the Pelicans, and by the way, might happen. You watch that Pelicans team as I saw them play on Denver. That is a team that has 1,000% quit on their coach, and now I think it's just a matter of time until they fire Willie Green. But even then, is it going to save their season? They don't have their pick. It's owed to the Atlanta Hawks. So the Pelicans winning it is interesting to me because I love Jalen Johnson. Risa Shea is interesting. I don't really know anything about Asa Newell. I got to learn his game a little bit. Dyson Daniels is younger than you would think. So they have a young core, but Jalen Johnson and Risa Shea is interesting. Like with Washington, I love them both, but if you gave them an anchor star, an anchor scoring type guy, I think that makes them a whole different level. So Pelicans winning the lottery, sending it to Atlanta, to me would also be make for a team that would become more interesting in the coming years.
Yeah, that actual scoring archetype is something they've been missing, because like Jalen Johnson is a super weird player for me because I'm high on
Love him.
him. There are so many things that I really like about him, but what he's not is a go get a bucket guy. Like that's one thing that he's pretty clearly not. Like he's more of like a rim pressure playmaking combination, like transition playmaking combination. I've been impressed by him as a passer. I am not super high on him as like a go get a bucket guy. And so I do think that is probably Atlanta's biggest roster weakness in general right now is like if
Mhm.
things break down, their best one-on-one guy might be Kristaps Porzingis. So like getting a substantial upgrade as a one-on-one player, a guy like DeBonsa would be real. Like I actually really like Zachary Rissache, but once again, he's an off-ball weapon. He's a weak
Agreed.
side scorer driving closeouts, a guy who runs the floor well in transition. He's not a go get a bucket guy. And so the Hawks end up getting that Pelicans pick and turning it into AJ DeBonsa would be crazy. And you know what's super sad about that, Adams? The last thing I'll say about it. It's so hard to look back and be like, man, that DeJounte Murray trade just completely derailed the entire franchise. But before the Achilles tear, I did like DeJounte Murray as a player. I did think he was a really poor fit with that Pelicans roster. And that really was
Mm.
the mistake above and beyond anything with the injury and the assets that got sent out. Like, of all the teams to go for DeJounte, I just didn't understand the Pelicans doing it. I thought he was a little bit redundant with Zion. I didn't think he fit his skill set very well. And it, like, talk about one trade like completely derailing the entire future of a franchise.
Yeah, well, this one I think is going to be even worse because Derek Queen. I've seen that guy, and he is not worth losing out on a chance for a top 3 pick in this upcoming draft. The next team I have here that's interesting, and I'm just going with young cores, just so you know. Obviously, like Trey Young is there, but if you get the number 1 pick, maybe you reevaluate what direction you're going. The next team I have is the Utah Jazz. Now, the reason they're third and not higher is they already have Ace Bailey, who I think projects to be the type of guy. I mean, if it's going to work, he's going to be like a number 1 option type. And then they have all these great other guys, Sensabaugh, Collier, Clayton, Filipowski, who I like personally, Kessler. They have a lot of young guys that I don't like when teams have like 8 young guys because I think then somebody's going to not reach their potential. But nonetheless, Ace Bailey, DeBansa, it would make for an interesting foundation that I think Utah Jazz fans would be very excited about.
Yeah, and one of the things that's been an issue for Ace Bailey early in the year is he just hasn't got much of an opportunity. The minutes have been low, the opportunities have been low. He hasn't shot the ball well, but he hasn't had much of a chance. And like part of the issue there is, like you said, there's this complete logjam at the power forward position already. And like it's just one of those things where eventually at some point there's got to be some sort of consolidation that opens up more opportunities for a guy like Ace to be aggressive. And like also
You're
Utah's
right.
kind of done this, not so much last year, but the year before, where like they come out and they look super competent under Will Hardy and with all the talent that they have. And then about halfway through, they're like, okay, that was fun. Let's send everybody out. And I would imagine that that's how this story eventually ends, probably with a Markkanen trade.
I mean, almost no question, but they still have so much young talent that I think would be an interesting young base. But you are right. They already have the issue I'm talking about where there's players stacked behind other prospects, stacked behind other prospects, which is always tough. The Brooklyn Nets are the next team on my list for intrigue. Now, here's the thing. They are going to do everything in their power to win this lottery. And it is early to be talking about this. Did you see it? It's only 4-game sample size or 5-game sample size, but they have a 129 plus defensive rating. And I think that is by design. That number will come down a little bit just because nobody can allow that many points. But I think that they are close to a lock to being the worst defense, which is the best way you can stealth tank because you don't even have to look like it. Play all your guys. We can't guard anyone, so just play them. Even if they're on fire, we're going to lose. The problem is they don't have an anchor player right now that I love. And so this guy, the next guy, and I mean, some of the draft picks they took this year, I just don't know well enough. But the next guy in does feel like that's the cornerstone building block. So it's a little less along than some of these other teams.
You didn't like the Cam Thomas 40.0 assist game against the San Antonio Spurs?
Oh,
That was
I loved it. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, there's some generational stuff going on in Brooklyn. I've actually caught them a couple of times just randomly in film sessions, and like they're like an entertaining car crash to watch in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's they're, I don't even know what direction they're going. To your point, there's not a single player there where I'm like, this is a guy that I view as like a foundational piece. And so, I mean, for them to get a guy like DeBonsa, that would at least give them some direction for how to build around that guy.
Just got to run through these ones because we're up against it here. But Blazers, they have Sharp, Kamara, Scoot, Klingon, Hansen. They have like a lot of young guys. I don't know if they're going to be in this mix or not, but they're interesting. There's two teams that I'll go to, and then we can wrap it up. The Grizzlies are sneaky interesting here. And the Grizzlies not only can win the lottery by being bad enough to get in, we'll say it's too early to know if that's going to be the case, but they can win it that way. They also get the worst of the Orlando, Memphis, Phoenix, Washington. Memphis gets the best two of those. So they have a handful of ways that they can actually move up in the lottery and draft a superstar this year, which is kind of interesting. And yes, they have right now they're Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr., but they have some interesting young guys, Edie, Coward, Wells, Gigi Jackson, Aldama, that if they were to win a lottery or get two of the top 4 or 5 picks, maybe they look around and say, you know what, let's close the book on this era and start the next one because we have the next group of young stars.
Yeah, I mean, well, at a very basic level, we just talked about how the top of the draft is power forwards and point guards. And you've got Jaren Jackson, who like can't play center because he's such a bad rebounder. And then you have Ja Morant, who plays point guard. Santi Aldama is also a power forward. There's a redundancy there. There's just the Ty Jerome piece at point guard. They're deep at the positions that are at the top of the draft. And so that kind of puts them in a situation where even if they were to win the lottery, they would have to make some big foundational decisions about what direction to go with their franchise. For me personally, we talked about this when we were at the 3-on-3 tournament a couple weeks ago, but like I am just kind of all out on Ja Morant. Like once again this year, he just can't hit a jump shot to save his life. He continues to like regress year over year. Despite, I mean, he had a game winner against Phoenix because he still is one of the best, like get to the middle of the floor and pop up off the ground for a floater guys in the league. And that's always been his like foundational superstar trait, but he hasn't improved anything around that in addition to struggling to stay available. So like, I like, if I was a Grizzlies fan and we got a top pick, I'd start looking at shopping Ja and going after a guard.
The last one, and then we'll get out of here. If the Atlanta Hawks win the lottery, it goes to the San Antonio Spurs. I just want to put that out there as they're 2-3 and don't look very good right now. If you want a worst case scenario for the league, and it's not because I hate the Spurs, it's that I want the Spurs to have to work for their championships. If you get another number 1 pick, I'm going to be a little fearful for the next decade.
They trade Trey if they go south, don't they? I mean, that is like almost a certainty, I would think. Like if they end up in February and they're below 500, I would imagine Trey Young's on another team.
Their pick situation is part of what makes it interesting, though, is there any value in tanking or, losing? So it's one of the equations there that I think makes this whole thing difficult. Yes, understanding all the pick swaps and stuff. I saw a flow chart that was like 8 layers deep about how certain picks could convey. It's if this team wins, they send 2 to this team and then 1 to that team and 1. It's insane, some of these trades. I don't even know if the GMs know. There's probably some GMs that are looking at it and do we have a pick? Do we not? I don't even know.
I was gonna say I don't envy some of these front office guys with how convoluted the CBA can get at times.
Hit that outro music for us, James. This was our first Friday show, Timpf, and what do you know? We went 10 minutes long. Guys that like to talk hoops, man. What can we do?
Yeah, it was a blast. I'm really looking forward to doing this weekly throughout the season. It's just going to be a fun little like recap on every week.
100%, man. You can check him out at The Volume, of course, Hoops Tonight, his own YouTube channel. It's great stuff. You want to join that conversation as well. Everybody, I'm back with Mark Stein tomorrow, and he's going to be giving us, as he always does, scuttlebutt. What is people around the league? He knows everybody. He's the most connected man behind the scenes in the NBA. So what are people at the NBA level talking about this week? That'll be tomorrow. You'll check it out on this channel. Hit that like button on the way out. We'll see you.
Silly like the mayor.